attack the U.S. homeland and cannot affect U.S. interests around the world. And we have done an outstanding job, I think, in going after directly al-Qaeda in this border region between Pakistan and Afghanistan. We could not have been as successful as we have been without the cooperation of the Pakistan government. And so on a whole range of issues, they have been an effective partner with us. What is also true is that for our goal of being able to transition out of Afghanistan and leave a stable government behind, one that is independent, one that is respectful of human rights, one that is democratic, that Pakistan, I think, has been more ambivalent about some of our goals there. And I think that they have hedged their bets in terms of what Afghanistan would look like. And part of hedging their bets is having interactions with some of the unsavory characters who they think might end up regaining power in Afghanistan after coalition forces have left. What we've tried to persuade Pakistan of is that it is in their interest to have a stable Afghanistan, that they should not be feeling threatened by a stable, independent Afghanistan. We've tried to get conversations between Afghans and Pakistans going more effectively than they have been in the past. But we've still got more work to do. And there is no doubt that there's some connections that the Pakistani military and intelligence services have with certain individuals that we find trouble. And I've said that publicly, and I've said it privately to Pakistani officials as well. They see their security interests threatened by an independent Afghanistan, in part because they think it will ally itself to India, and Pakistan still considers India their mortal enemy. Part of what we want to do is actually get Pakistan to realize that a peaceful approach towards India would be in everybody's interests and would help Pakistan actually develop, because one of the biggest problems we have in Pakistan right now is poverty, illiteracy, a lack of development, civil institutions that aren't strong enough to deliver for the Pakistani people. And in that environment, you've seen extremism grow. You've seen militancy grow that doesn't just threaten our efforts in Afghanistan, but also threatens the Pakistani government and the Pakistani people as well. So trying to get that reorientation is something that we're continuing to work on. It's not easy.
I'm sorry, sir. Consequences if we do not sever ties?
We will constantly evaluate our relationship with Pakistan based on, is overall this helping to protect Americans and our interests? We have a great desire to help the Pakistani people strengthen their own society and their own government. And so I'd be hesitant to punish aid for flood victims in Pakistan because of poor decisions by their intelligence services. But there's no doubt that we're not going to feel comfortable with a long-term strategic relationship with Pakistan if we don't think that they're mindful of our interests as well. I'll make this last question. Amir Madani.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Caught you by surprise, huh?
Yeah, you did. What should European leaders do to resolve the sovereign debt crisis going forward? And second, how risky is this continued situation to the U.S. economy? And finally, do you feel that the European leaders have been negligent in pushing austerity too soon?
Those are good questions. The biggest headwind the American economy is facing right now is uncertainty about Europe, because it's affecting global markets. The slowdown that we're seeing is not just happening here in the United States. It's happening everywhere. Even in some of the emerging markets like China, you're seeing greater caution, less investment, deep concern. In some ways, as frustrating as the financial sector has been here in the United States after the Lehman's collapse, the aggressive actions that were taken right after Lehman's did help us to strengthen the financial sector and the banking sector in ways that that Europe did not fully go through. And uncertainty around Greece and their ability to pay their debts runs on in the capital markets on the debt that many of these southern European countries have been facing, as well as Ireland and Portugal. All that's put severe strain on the world financial system. I speak frequently with Chancellor Merkel and President Sarkozy. They are mindful of these challenges. I think they want to act to prevent a sovereign debt crisis from spinning out of control or seeing the potential breakup of the euro. I think they're very committed to the European project. But their politics is tough because essentially they've got to get agreement with not only their own parliaments, they've got to get agreement with 20 parliaments or 24 parliaments or 27 parliaments. And engineering that kind of coordinated action is very difficult. But what I've been seeing over the last month is a recognition by European leaders of the urgency of the situation. And nobody's obviously going to be affected more than they will be if the situation there spins out of control. So I'm confident that they want to get this done. I think there's some technical issues that they're working on in terms of how they get a big enough, how do they get enough firepower to let the markets know that they're going to be standing behind Euro members who may be in a weaker position. But they've got to act fast. And we've got a G20 meeting coming up in November. My strong hope is that by the time of that G20 meeting, that they have a very clear, concrete plan of action that is sufficient to the task. It will have an effect. It's already having an effect here in the United States. It will continue to have an effect on our economy because the world is now interconnected in ways that it's never been before. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we have post-2008, after this financial crisis, is that America has always been, well, over the last 20 years, has been the engine for world economic growth. We were the purchasers of last resort. We were the importers of last resort. We would stimulate our economies, and our American consumers would buy stuff around the world. And so if they got into trouble, they could always say, well, we're going to sell to the U.S. Well, we're now going through a situation where families are cutting back and trying to reduce their debts. Businesses are more cautious. And the U.S. government obviously has its own fiscal challenges. I mean, we've got to make sure that we're living within our means, although we've got to do it gradually and not in ways that immediately affect a fragile economy. So what that means is Europe is not going to be able to export its way out of this problem. They're going to have to fix that problem. And part of the goal that I've been trying to promote for the last 2 years, and I'll repeat at the G20, is more balanced economic growth worldwide. We've got to get into a posture where the U.S. is always going to be a big market, and we're going to welcome goods from all around the world, but we've also got to be selling goods around the world. We can't just be, running up our debt in order to help other folks' economies. We've got to have, as not only families, our businesses, and our government, we've got to make sure that we're being prudent and we're producing here in the United States. And by the way, that's what's going to create strong middle-class jobs here in the United States. I think part of what's going on for the country generally is this sense of, you know what, a lot of that debt that had been built up prior to 2008, that we were living on borrowed time because the underlying fundamentals of the economy weren't as strong as they needed to be. And that's why not only do we have to put Americans back to work now, but we've also got to keep on reforming our education system so it's producing the highest skilled graduates in the world. That's why we've got to keep on investing in basic research and science. That's why we've got to make sure that we're rebuilding our infrastructure. That's why we've got to have a smarter energy policy, because that's a huge source of us having to import from other countries instead of being able to export to other countries. All those things are going to be important, and all those things are going to be challenging. They're going to be hard. But right now, we've got the problem of putting people back to work. That's why Congress needs to pass this jobs bill. And last point I'll make, if Bill's right and everybody on Capitol Hill is cynical and saying there's no way that the overall jobs bill passes in its current form, we're just going to keep on going at it. I want everybody to be clear. My intention is to insist that each part of this, I want an explanation as to why we shouldn't be doing it. Each component part. Putting people back to work, rebuilding our roads, putting teachers back in the classroom, tax cuts for small businesses and middle-class families, tax breaks for our veterans. We will just keep on going at it and hammering away until something gets done. And I would love nothing more than to see Congress act so aggressively that I can't campaign against them as a do-nothing Congress. All right? Thank you very much, everybody.